60% of modern foods came from the New World. First up were the three sisters of corn, beans, and squash, developed in Mesoamerica and planted throughout much of the New World. Given the lack of horses and elongated shape of the Americas, trade was less efficient than Eurasia, and technical knowledge traveled slower. Much of the innovation happened in various locations and time periods of Mesoamerica, the Andes, Amazon, and North America. How Mesoamericans came up with corn, or maize, proved a difficult riddle to solve because there were no wild varieties. Carbon dating indicated corn goes back at least 4,500 years, and scientists believe it was domesticated in earlier forms at least 7,000 years ago. Thousands of varieties were developed, which had specialized uses. Mesoamericans created corn without any obvious precursors. Scientists believe it started with teosinte, not an obvious food source. Teosinte is a grass native to Mesoamerica. It had ears which were small and hard, providing little nutrition. Archaeologists found evidence of small cobs in multiple caves, indicating the importance of the plant and its development towards more modern corn. Charles Mann called it man's first and perhaps his greatest feat of genetic engineering. Tortillas became central to Mesoamerican food. Dried corn was soaked in water with lime. Kernels were ground into masa paste, pressed into flatbreads, then cooked and eaten. Grinding was an activity performed by women considered low status and therefore doing the hardest and least rewarding work. Various parts of skeletons of grinders were often deformed by years of this activity. Ground corn was part of gruels called atole, using water or turkey broth with any number of other ingredients like chilies, beans, salt, or onions. The taco, an Aztec word, was a filled tortilla, an indigenous food to go. Tamales, also an Aztec word, were corn dough mixed with vegetables and meat, often cooked in corn husks, then unwrapped and served with salsa, also from Mesoamerica. We'll be spending more time with tacos in later videos. Most indigenous people use the companion planting of the three sisters, with climbing beans, growing up the corn and squash more of a ground cover to maintain water and reduce weeds. The beans had the added benefit of fixing nitrogen in the soil. Different varieties were used based on local environments. Squash may have been domesticated 8 to 10,000 years ago. Pumpkins and gourds were crops related to squash. Beans from Peru date back 7,700 years. The most widespread beans were conveniently called common beans and include green, kidney, pinto, and navy, what most of us call beans, used for black beans, baked beans, refried beans, and bean soup. Potatoes grew wild around Lake Titicaca in multiple varieties and domesticated 7 to 10,000 years ago. The variety was expanded by the Peruvians into the thousands. Potatoes were grown at relatively high elevations because that worked, while other crops not adaptable to the mountains were grown in the lowlands. Llamas proved useful hauling foodstuffs and other goods up and down the Andes. Peruvians' uses of potatoes were like today: mashed, baked, boiled, roasted, and stewed. They could extract water by leaving them out in freezing weather. Conveniently, dehydrated potatoes would keep for years without refrigeration beyond the cold conditions of the Andes. Populations likely summered in the foothills of the Andes and wintered by the coast, developing agriculture on relatively barren land. This required extensive irrigation. The secret was a widespread trade system from the coast into the Andes. Seafoods from the ocean, beans, squash, and cotton from coastal rivers, corn and the Andean grain quinoa from the foothills, potatoes in the heights, llamas and alpacas for transport, wool, and meat. The Inca kept large stores of surplus foods, a major reason for various techniques for food preparation. In this harsh climate, drought and food shortages were common. The precursor to tomatoes came from South and Central America, initially with pea-sized fruit. It probably became a farm product resembling modern tomatoes by 500 BCE. The Mesoamericans had several varieties of red, green, and yellow tomatoes. The word is Aztec for something like the swelled fruit. Tomatoes were eaten raw, fried, in multiple sauces, as a juice, or served shredded with chilies. Early Spanish writings emphasize the wide variety of tomatoes available in Aztec markets and their importance for sauces and drinks. The cocoa tree was a Mayan native, domesticated over 5,000 years ago. They munched on the beans and made a chocolate drink, which was used in marriage ceremonies. The fruit of the tree is a cocoa pod filled with some 30 to 50 seeds in a sweet pulp. The pulp was made into a juice, and the seeds fermented, then roasted, and usually ground into a powder. When mixed with chilies and cornmeal, the drink was called zacatol. A Spaniard claimed that Montezuma drank only chocolate, whipped and flavored with vanilla and other spices, then served in a golden goblet. Chilies originated in Mesoamerica and Peru, with the term from the Aztec. It may have been one of the oldest cultivated crops in the New World. Archaeological evidence dates back over 10,000 years. Chilies can be sweet or spicy, both useful as seasonings. The jalapeno is a well-known hot pepper which is grown around Veracruz and named for the city of Jalapa. Columbus found chilies in the Caribbean and called them peppers because of their similarity to black pepper. In other words, good for future trading opportunities. The avocado tree was indigenous to Mesoamerica, with the fruit edible and eaten for the last 9 to 10,000 years. The trees have been cultivated for at least 5,000 years. An avocado looks like a black pear, but is considered a large berry. The Aztecs made a form of guacamole, again from another Aztec word, with mashed avocado, then adding tomatoes, onions, salt, and chilies. Mexico remains the largest producer. Vanilla is a Mesoamerican native, a spice from a particular orchid conveniently called the vanilla orchid. The vanilla is cured by sweating in a hot, dry place, slow drying in the sun, and conditioning by storing in closed boxes for up to 6 months. Vanilla can be ground up and mixed with other ingredients like chilies. This could be added to chocolate drinks. The Maya also used it as incense and to treat insect bites and other wounds. Modern production is used but expensive. Consequently, artificial vanilla flavoring is more common. Various species of manioc or cassava, a woody shrub, were South and Mesoamerican natives and still grown there. The earliest evidence came from a Mayan site some 1,400 years ago. The root crop may have been farmed for 8 to 10,000 years into the Amazon basin. It proved to be easy to grow. Manioc is drought tolerant and can grow in poor soils. The Portuguese introduced manioc into Africa, and Nigeria is now the largest producer. Manioc is boiled because it contains cyanide and other poisons, so proper preparation is critical. A coarse flour results in cassava bread, which does not go stale quickly. Sweet varieties were used in place of potatoes. Tapioca starch can be extracted from the manioc and used for multiple purposes in addition to a great dessert. Peanuts are a type of bean from South America. Peanuts are legumes grown for their seeds with nitrogen-fixing bacteria that enrich the soil. The Incas ground the peanut and ate it as a paste or mixed with corn to produce a drink. That Inca paste could be considered the first peanut butter. The modern version would have to wait for Dr. Kellogg's 1895 patent. Kellogg also invented cornflakes. Those are the major food products from the New World, but not all. Other relatively important ones included pineapple from Peru, the sweet potato from Central and South America, and cashews from South America. Quinoa and amaranth were pseudo-cereals. Various cacti were edible. Then there were various leaf vegetables similar to lettuce. Pulque, a fermented juice of the century plant, was a common drink. Other fermented drinks were made of pineapple, corn, cassava, cacti, and berries. Chocolate drinks from cocoa and flavored with chilies were favored by the elites. Agave is a succulent, and the sap was fermented into mezcal. The agave grown around the town of Tequila was fermented. Distillation had to wait for the Spanish. They had almost no livestock, with the major Peruvian exceptions of llamas, alpacas, and guinea pigs. The llamas were useful as pack animals in the Andes. Many cultures domesticated dogs, and often ducks and turkeys. There are about 70 species of tobacco, and domesticated in Mesoamerica by 3,000 years ago, smoked for ceremonies, also used as a medicine. It became the top plant in Europe and beyond. New World colonists could profitably plant more and more, but with so many Old World people puffing away, this was an insatiable market. 2 of the 4 species of cotton were in the New World, Mesoamerica and Peru. Old World species came from India and Arabia. Mesoamerican cotton is considered the best. Archaeological evidence dates from at least 4,000 years ago. Most Mayan and later Aztec textiles were made from cotton. Aztec elite seem to have been fashion magnates, while soldiers had armor of woven cotton. Latex came from the sap of Amazonian rubber trees and used in Mesoamerica beginning with the Olmec. They used it to make containers and textiles waterproof and balls for sport. The indigenous peoples of North America above Mesoamerica had different histories of culture and food, and will be covered next on food history and mystery.